Hello, welcome to Free Will, Science, and Religion. I'm Chandler Klebs, and I'm here with George Ortega. And we're going to be talking a little bit about the topic of, people being overweight related to the free will topic, and how can they claim that they have a free will and can choose to do anything that they want, while at the same time being unable to lose weight. And it also applies to other subjects too, but specifically, if people had a free will, then why does anybody struggle to lose weight?
Yeah, it sounds great. All right, so basically, you're right. I mean, that's in a sense that somebody like imagine being I'm like about 10, 15 pounds over whatever, and yeah, I'm trying to lose weight, and it's so clear to me that if I had a free will, I would exert my willpower each time, every day, and eat less, and eat less. But what happens? I get hungry, or a lot of times people eat for other reasons. They're anxious, you're preoccupied, they feel a kind of emptiness. There are all these emotional reasons why people eat, and so like there's no free will there. I mean, like again, it seems so obvious that if a person had free will, you wouldn't have one overweight person on the planet. Maybe with the exception of some people who have glandular conditions or things like that.
And it's very interesting because everything we do, the what we eat, the amount we eat, how much we exercise, everything that we do is obviously caused by our culture and what we're taught, and we already know that the whole nurture component, which is most obviously stronger than the nature component in most cases. And so we have to consider that there's a difference between today, when people are watching lots of TV and they're driving cars instead of walking, and people aren't doing the same kind of, they're not all farmers. I wish we were all farmers. That would be awesome. But you know what I'm saying? So we live in a less active society. We also live in a society where all this food, a lot of it which is junk, is everywhere you go. So that's a lot of it is that, so somebody, and there are stories like this, like somebody who comes from a different country, will come to America, and then a little after they've been there a while, they get really fat and they wonder why. Obviously they're in a different environment and something has changed.
Chandler, I appreciate, you're basically going through, certain reasons why we're heavier today than several decades ago, and it makes sense. There are causes. But here's the thing, relative to this question of whether we have a free will or not, in a certain sense, all these causes become somewhat inconsequential because, the bottom line is that a person who's overweight and senses that they're overweight and wants to lose weight if they wanted to, and if they had a free will, all they would have to do is say, well, I'm going to eat less. It's not even about exercise. It's not about anything else. It's like simply about taking in fewer calories. And that is such a powerful refutation of free will. I mean, like, basically anyone who has a free will, we should get some guests, on this podcast who are overweight and believe in free will and have them try to explain to us that if they have a free will, why are they overweight? Why can't they lose 5, 10, 20, 30 pounds?
I don't think it's really quite just as simple, even though there's obviously a big part of that, about the calories. We also have to consider that people don't eat just for the calories. They're eating, their bodies need nutrition. They need their vitamins, their minerals. They need their protein. They need their various things. And so I think what's happening is that because the body's not getting what it needs, it's not getting healthy food that's satisfying these people. That's why their body is telling them to eat more in the hopes that it will get something it needs. I think that's a big part of it.
All right, Chant, you're right. I hadn't considered that. I mean, You're right. I think in other words, if somebody's eating Twinkies all day, then certainly that's that's gonna I would hope. I think yeah, I definitely appreciate your point. I would hope that in the vast majority, or at least in the majority of cases, that you know for people to it's not that people are eating unhealthy per se. I mean, we could all eat healthier, but I think it's that people are simply eating too much. People like I think healthy people maybe eating healthy food, which makes it a lot easier, will eat when they're hungry and not eat when they're not hungry. But in today's world, like a lot of food manufacturers, they'll put ingredients like salt and other ingredients into the food to make people hungrier, to make people want to eat more. So, but again, like back to this free will thing, if they had a free will, and they were eating a relatively healthy diet, there's absolutely no reason why they shouldn't be able to, like, with their free will, just compel themselves to eat less.
Exactly. So even though there are food additives and all that sort of thing, we're saying that if these people truly had a free will, then there would be no way that these could make them hungrier either.
Exactly. Excellent point. Yeah.
See, that's what we're getting to, George, is because this concept of free will is so incoherent because it implies that nothing can make you do something. And obviously that's false. We know, for example, that salt definitely makes people thirstier, for example. That's obvious. We know that people are on medication that makes them hungrier and sometimes changes their hormone levels and that sort of thing. So that's another big problem. And so the very fact that we have these physical bodies that are influenced, everything that we take in, whether it's the food or whether it's medication or the water we drink or even the air we breathe, all of that has an effect on our health, and it's not like we can freely will that cause and effect away.
All right. So like I think we've kind of like, very strongly I think demonstrated, yeah, if a person has a free will and a person is overweight and a person wants to lose weight, then, what is the reason they're not losing it? Obviously, they don't have a free will because like if they had a free will, they'd lose the weight. So like, but now here's the thing. Let's segue to why it's important for people to know that they don't have a free will relative to this question of losing weight.
Okay, I can respond to that because, for one thing, it helps them remove the blame, both, first of all, from themselves for feeling like a failure, feeling like that they've chosen to do something wrong and it's their fault. So that's part of it. But perhaps even more importantly, removing this blame of other people, particularly people who are blaming other people for being fat or for otherwise being unhealthy. They say, well, it's your choices. It's what you choose to eat, and so that's what your problem is. So it's your fault. You deserve to be fat or you deserve to have heart disease. And there are those people out there.
Absolutely. Yeah, I want to just follow up on your point that like basically the people blame themselves, not others, and that's another reason we're doing this series of podcasts because it's such unfair and cruel blaming. But like when a person blames themselves for not being able to lose the weight, for gaining the weight, that will erode a person's self-esteem. People who are heavier, on the most part, not always, tend to kind of like not feel as good about themselves as people who are more slender. And relative to free will, like relative to willpower, because basically like losing weight requires willpower. Like for example, just the willpower to eat less or the willpower to go to the gym or so, or whatever. Now, to the extent a person doesn't value themselves because they're blaming themselves for being fat, for not being able to like control their appetite and all, that limits their willpower. The less esteem, self-esteem person has, the less willpower that person will have to draw from in order to lose weight. So it's kind of like this vicious downward spiral. So in other words, like it's not just important, it people understanding that they don't have a free will can actually help them to lose weight. Whereas, like, believing that they have a free will obviously doesn't work because, like, again, 2/3 of Americans are overweight. So, like, the belief in free will isn't helping them. But there's great reason to predict that as people reject the notion of free will, they'll stop blaming themselves as much, feel better about themselves, and as a result, be able to summon up more willpower to then lose the weight.
Yeah, their self-esteem is obviously a big, important part of how much they feel about themselves, and I guess that's a lot of it. If they feel that if they, I guess that they feel like they are worth the effort to keep trying to find what will help them lose weight, rather than saying, "Oh, it's my fault. I deserve this," and then just accept it and not change it.
Yeah, because another thing is, like, in our society, in our culture, we're taught at a very early age that when we do something wrong, then we should be punished. And this is like a free will belief kind of consideration. So as adults, we kind of like integrate that understanding. And when we do something wrong, like eat too much, like not watch our weight, like, give into our appetites and are weak willed like that, we will blame ourselves for this and we will punish ourselves. So sometimes the punishment is even it can be even eating more, as punishment for not having the willpower to eat less. I mean, it's an insidious kind of thing, but yes, to the extent we blame ourselves for our overweightness, many people will feel that it's the right thing because they believe they have a free will to punish themselves for that weak will. And I mean, the punishment could come in a lot of other ways besides, maintaining the weight or gaining more weight. The punishment, it's very unfortunate, but like this is just yet another example of how this free will belief causes so much harm. In this case, relative to gaining weight and not being able to lose it.
And here's another thing to consider, George. Like, okay, we're gonna have some people they're not convinced that we lack free will. They still think they have free will. So I have a little thought experiment. We could go down a little trail here. Okay, based on this idea that when somebody does something wrong or bad, whatever, that they deserve to be punished, well, then let's imagine a situation wherein it's illegal to be fat. It's a crime to be fat, and so people are punished. And like, okay, what would the punishment be? Like, can you imagine? Now, obviously, the death penalty would be very extreme. I wouldn't want it to come to that, but this is just a hypothetical situation. So let's say that somebody got prison time for being fat, and this was a law. Do you think that it would in any way deter people from gaining weight, or do you think people would still be the same way?
Well, that's an interesting question. Is like punishment. We're not advocating, in this series of podcasts that we do away with punishment because we recognize that because we don't have a free will, we human beings are motivated by reward and punishment and the threat of reward and punishment. So basically, in this case, for example, let's say the punishment was that, let's say your refrigerator was like, connected to this computer controlled locking system that at 6 o'clock or 7 o'clock every night, you know, if you're convicted of one of these eating crimes, you're, the it gets locked, right? And then you've got this GPS wristband, right? Where like you can't, I don't know, and you can't order in. So like there's this mechanism. So like the punishment is like, hey, you can't have any more food after 7 p.m. after you've had your dinner. So in that case, yes, I think the punishment would work.
Well, yeah, if you had all that kind of technology, maybe so. I love how you just really expand on this thought experiment. But yeah, what's interesting, see, I wonder, because I wonder how much of it, like, I think there's two things going on, because Often it's true that fear is a powerful motivator, and it does obviously deter people from doing some things if they know that they'll be punished for doing it, or at least they get better at hiding about it. But at the same time, I'm not exactly sure that people know enough about what is the healthy way to eat and make sure that you don't shrivel up and with your bones and muscles just getting all weak. Because if somebody just tries to, eat less and just goes that approach, well then that they still have to make sure they're getting the right nutrients. And so I think that's a big issue. And I mean, I think that's just an important part of the education. And so I think that with the way, things currently are, where, a lot of people are eating, McDonald's all the time, and they're eating very high calorie things with no nutrients. So I actually think that even if there was some sort of a jail sentence or something as punishment for being fat, I don't even believe it would deter people because they don't even know why they're getting fat in the first place.
Well, yeah, and this is kind of like where, we were talking before these podcasts about like, how I was saying how certain rich, very rich people in this world are preventing not just good things from happening, but absolutely necessary things from happening, like fighting climate change. And like in the food industry, like there are so many people with hypertension, high blood pressure. And with high blood pressure, you need they recommend a diet that has 1,500 milligrams of sodium or less per day. Now, I eat these slices of whole wheat bread. I used to bake bread, but there's no way I'm going to do that right now. And they each contain 170 milligrams of sodium. So, like, if I eat 4 or 5 slices of bread, I'm already halfway to this 1,500. It makes the processed foods make it very, very difficult for people to meet these dietary guidelines. So really, like if our government wasn't controlled by the rich, and was doing its job of protecting the people from being abused by people, who really don't care, who kind of like just profit, by offering people things that aren't good for them, then yeah, then I think they could have at the very least, a much, much broader array of sodium-free products, of very, very low sodium products, and just even like with the other foods, we're talking about nutrition in general, to kind of like to place limits on the amount of fat, the amount of saturated fat, and fine, this is like some people might consider this draconian, but these foods that people consume, like McDonald's and all, they tend to be far more dangerous to people's health than are a lot of drugs that are actually illegal, that have been illegal for decades. So, like, in terms of healthcare costs, in terms of like the dangers, that would be one way to go. We're getting a bit, we're straying from this, like, but Chandler, I think, we want to return to this challenge to overweight people. If you're overweight and you believe that you have a free will, explain, how, and the third component is that you genuinely want to lose weight. Now, I have a feeling that most people who are overweight want to lose weight. Some people might say, well, I'm overweight and I enjoy being overweight. I think they're lying to themselves. I don't think they're being truthful. So like, but like you have a person who's overweight and wants to lose overweight. Oh yeah, well, if you have a free will, why are you eating so much? Why can't you eat less? This is such a powerful and simple refutation of free will that affects two-thirds of the American public.
Yeah, yeah, we need to stick with that idea as a refutation because that's just it. If they have a free will, then they have to explain to us why they can't freely will themselves to lose weight. And sure, there's all these details, and we've talked about some of the details, and it's good that we did, but at the same time, we want to hear their response to that. How do they respond to that?
And yeah, actually, yeah. So let's try to, because I think we both heard some of the responses. I think one people might say, well, I have a free will, but my will isn't completely free. But what kind of an answer is that? You're telling me like you're not completely free will, doesn't even allow you to eat less? I mean, come on, what kind of a free will is that?
Yeah, that's just it. It's sort of like it's that mysterious free will that allows you to raise your hand or not, but it doesn't allow you to eat less. It seems like I don't know, it doesn't seem like it's that useful of a free will.
Right. And another answer is to people who say, well, I don't have a complete free will, I have a partial free will. Remember in my book, I devote a chapter to that. Oh, yeah, well, how does a partial free will work? Because if there's a part of you that you're not in control of that's taking part in your decisions, guess what? You don't have a free will. Because, like, if that part of you is taking part in your decisions, that's denying you a free will. Free will is that the decision is completely yours.
Exactly. And that's the whole point is that some people, yeah, there's a lot. I would say that, George, there's actually more people who believe in a partial or limited free will than there are, full on libertarians. Just because full libertarianism, uh, belief in complete free will does sound insane because it is insane. So people have been coming up with these ideas of limited free will. But what we're actually trying to say is that if there is one thing that, makes a difference in your decision, if it takes part in your decision at all, then it's not your decision. If anything outside of your control, and that's what's interesting is the very desire to eat is not in anyone's control. So right there, it's just a simple fact. We do what our body tells us to.
Right. Another kind of example of partial free will people will suggest is like, well, I don't have a free will in all my decisions, but in some of them I do. Like, I'm free to raise my hand and not, but I'm not free to eat, less. But again, what kind of free will is that? I mean, is it up to you? Was it up to you to say that you can like raise your hand and not and but and not be able to, because if that wasn't up to you, then no, you don't have a free will. Something completely out of your control is determining what you can and can't do. So again, that refutes free will right there.
And let's not forget, George, these people who claim to have 100% control of their hands, but no control over what their hands put in their mouth.
Yeah.
It's so easy to refute. It's so ridiculous, and I'm hoping that people will get this, and I'm hoping that we get like a real life situation where we can actually use this, where
Right.
we can ask somebody, well, if about the free will thing. I guess it's kind of hard. It's not like we have a whole bunch of free will believing overweight people telling us about the struggle, but I suppose it could happen, and perhaps there will be people who will listen to this episode and will take our challenge. Well, if you have a free will, then why aren't you able to choose to lose weight or to eat less or eat healthier, whatever the case may be?
Absolutely. And I just want to make a point because right now we're kind of in a certain sense making fun of people who believe in free will, but we're not really. I mean, from our perspective, here's the thing, like whether you believe in free will or you understand free will is an illusion, that's not a free will decision. It's not up to us to understand that we don't have a free will. It's not up to those of us who believe they have a free will. So I mean that invites, I mean, Chandler, our last episode it was about, well, if we don't have a free will, um, who or what is controlling everything? And then the question becomes, so why does the universe, God, whatever you want to call it, the laws of nature, not allow people to get this? I mean, like this free will thing is not any more complicated than like if everything is caused, free will is impossible. If certain things are not caused, free will is impossible. Therefore, free will is impossible under every circumstance, any condition. I mean, how is it so difficult for people to get this? And why doesn't the universe or God, however we want to describe it, allow people to get this?
Maybe the universe doesn't get it. I don't know. It's interesting, but yeah, you make a good point. We're not making fun of people we're not blaming them for not getting it either. We're,
Exactly.
see, and this is a common case, George. For example, and this is something I like to make clear. Sometimes somebody will mock a belief. They will mock a belief. They will mock a certain theory or a religion or a certain philosophical idea. They mock the idea just as a reductio ad absurdum or something. Just this idea, like, let's take this claim and just see how absurd it is when applied to the real world. But we're not attacking people. We're not meaning to insult people. We're just pointing out that we hold beliefs that are irrational, and it's not our fault either.
Exactly. Exactly. And again, like, the better people understand, I mean, people believe in free will because they believe that that belief serves them well. They believe that life is better with that belief than it would be without it. And my understanding, and a lot of us are beginning to really understand very strongly that the exact opposite is strongly true. In other words, not only is this free will belief harmful, it is extremely harmful. It is responsible for so much of the conflict, so much of the adversity, of the of the vengeance and revenge and hostility in the world. I mean, imagine like 10 years from now, if nobody on the planet believed in free will, nobody could logically become angry with anyone. It would be logically impossible, because like this anger at other people and at ourselves is a complete result of this free will belief.
Yeah, it comes down to such basic things. People, they get mad at somebody, well, you don't believe the same religion as me, or you have a different opinion on gun control than I do, or something like that. Or it's like, and people blame people, for all kinds of things, obviously, including the overweight thing, including sexual orientation, all kinds of things. And without the free will belief, none of that blame is possible. And so it's pretty clear to me. I mean, I would say it's as evident to me that we're better off without the belief in free will as it's clear to me that free will is incoherent and cannot exist in any possible universe.
Okay, so I think, like, basically for our purpose of getting people to understand that there's no free will and getting people to understand that the belief, that overcoming the belief is important. I think this, again, focusing on people who are overweight serves both purposes. The challenge again is like anyone who's overweight who believes in free will, if you seriously would rather not be overweight, why are you overweight if you have a free will? And the other part of it is like, don't you see the harm that free will belief is causing you by your blaming yourself for your overweightness and by other people blaming yourself and shaming you for being overweight?
Yes, we're going to be revisiting this topic so much, and I hope that people will, take that challenge. If you believe you have a free will, then, you know, why can't you lose weight? But also, George, here's the deal. More importantly than anything, we want people to get this free will thing for the benefits that it brings in all areas of life. But it just so happens that this overweight topic happens to be one of the most powerful ways to get our message across in a way that all of our other talks about causality and randomness and the unconscious, although they're all true and they're all good, people still aren't getting it, and so we need every form of attack we have.
I agree. And again, the overweight issue, it affects two-thirds of Americans. We have a huge, population of allies that can both understand this clearly and see the issue's relevance to their lives through this.
All right, and we just passed our 30 minutes, so I'm gonna close out this one. You've been listening to Free Will, Science, and Religion with Chandler Klebs and George Ortega, and we've been talking about the belief in free will and why, if people believe they have a free will, they aren't able to choose to lose weight. and we got a little bit sidetracked on about food and diet and stuff like that, which is still valuable, but we're trying to stay with this theme of overweightness related to free will, and I hope you enjoy this episode and stay tuned for more. Bye.